If I'm not in control, I'm not safe. Now, this past year and a half has challenged humanity in more ways than one, with control being a massive issue. Join me and Vanessa Petronelli for a real as fuck conversation that will highlight the real pandemic that we're currently facing. And let me tell you, it's not what you think. In this episode, you'll learn the problems that visionaries are facing right now, visionaries just like you. You'll also learn how people on all sides of the discussion are acting out of fear, why terms like conspiracy theorist and sheep are furthering our divide, the importance of understanding what's really motivating you to fight the fight, why the word freedom has now become a trigger word, and how to really help and support humanity now. This is incredibly important to understand. Now, not only is Vanessa my best friend, but she is a leader on a mission, teaching people how to fully embrace their unique gifts and share their divine purpose with the world. She helps conscious leaders, celebrities, and creatives achieve grounded, strategic, results based transformations, taking their impact and success to the next level. Vanessa is also the creator of the incredible embodied alignment system, which provides the tools, processes, and daily practices to help students experience deeper clarity, intuition, self awareness, and momentum, both personally and professionally. She supports her clients and students worldwide through her private mentoring programs, retreats, keynote talks, channeling events, and online programs. Her work has been featured in Collective Evolution, Good Morning America, and so much more. This is truly a conversation that you want to listen to. But before we go any further, just a reminder to download a few episodes and drop a rating and review on iTunes. Every single download, rating, and review helps get this podcast out to more leaders around the world. And my new book, Potent Leadership, is coming. All you got to do to get on the wait list is text hashtag book launch to 1781-336-0160. Now it is time to talk about control and the real pandemic with Vanessa Petronelli. Hey, thought leaders, I am back with a returning guest, someone who hasn't been on the show since the first season, which was like 4 years ago. Someone who's also one of my bestest friends. And I really don't have that many inner circle friends, so that says a lot. Someone that I can jam on aliens, jam with about aliens and plant medicine and politics and all the bullshit that's happening in our world. We can basically talk about anything and everything, and we always have like the best conversations. So, Vanessa, welcome back to the show. I am so excited to dive into a conversation with you today.
Thank you. It's so good to be here again, Ruby. What a nice intro. I really appreciate it. And I can't believe it's been 4 years since I've been on the show. Like, has it really been that long?
Yeah, it's been like a little over 3 years, because this is year 4 of the podcast. And I know I had you on year 1. So I know time flies. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like episode number 218. So
wow, like kudos to you for being on episode 218, and holy shit, time has flown. Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah, time has flown and a lot has happened in our world. And I know that we're going to flow in today's conversations, just to our listeners and viewers. We're going to flow about the current state of the world and what's taking place, and really its impact on us and leaders and humanity, and perhaps even diving into a little bit of like what's really going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
V has been someone who has known about this for a long time. She's been privy to the agenda of all of this, and it's been interesting observing you as all of this has come to light. because I know that you went through your own phase of like, well, I told you this was going to happen. And then, but then also stepping out as a leader and really like holding space for the collective while also, I mean, it's really, I know you feel this too. It's such a battle. We want to hold space for the collective, but at the same time, we get impatient and we just want people to like wake the fuck up.
Oh, I know. I hear you. It's so true. It's such a fine line, isn't it? To be able to do both and to do it well and to do it in a way that you know, there's an inclusivity around that of holding the space for the collective and having compassion for where everyone is and meeting them where they're at. And then there's also this, like you talk about, I'm very impatient. It is one of my absolute soul lessons this lifetime is learning to be patient. And I think especially as visionaries, we see beyond the current time. And it's hard to see where we can go in this trajectory of the timeline around the awakening piece, and then to look at where we are and the current consciousness level on the planet, and fit these two realities together, which sometimes they just can't, not where we currently are. So yeah, I hear you on that. It is definitely a challenge.
And I like how you describe that, because that I strongly believe that there are a lot of people going through that timeline aspect right now of like, maybe they don't even see what's going to take place. Maybe they weren't privy to the agenda, maybe, but they have this innate knowing that they can't explain. And then there's this discomfort of being here now because of the timeline. It's like, your soul knows where this is going, and you're in this timeline, in this current present moment of like all full blown bull fuckery. Like I don't even know what else to call it.
Yeah.
And it gets hard. Like I know for me, it's really tough, and I have to have days where I'm just not online, days where I'm not talking to anyone. Sometimes that means days in front of Netflix and just watching funny shows, because it can all feel like too much. And I believe that it's important for us to be grounded in the truth of what's happening, but it's also important for us to remain grounded in ourselves, because the truth right now is pretty scary and really ugly.
Yeah, I love that. I go through the exact same thing. I mean, capacity from where I was, let's say in 2019, before all of this started, to capacity right now is completely different. And people have to remember, especially leaders who are, we talk about waves of consciousness. Like there's the first waivers, there's the second waivers, there's the third waivers, there's a fourth waivers. And it's a really actually beautiful concept of looking at how consciousness raises on the planet. And oftentimes leaders who are here to really activate, to provoke truth, to be the way showers for others, we go first, right? We go in the first and second wave, sometimes the third. And it's so important, I think, for people who are in the first and second waves, where you really know, like, in your body, maybe you're even talking about, what's happening in the world very outspokenly on your platforms with your, clients or customers, whatever it is that you do, to have patience with yourself and compassion for not having as much capacity right now, because being able to know the truth and being able to speak about it, especially in a time where there's so much polarization happening and division, it's exhausting to hold the truth and also hold yourself in the process. And so I've noticed, even for me, like capacity has greatly diminished. I mean, there are days, sometimes even weeks, where it's like I have all these things I need to do, and I'm lucky if I can tackle one or two things aside from working with clients. Like clients are always a top priority for me with my work, but all the other things, the responsibilities, the to-do list, it's like so many of those things have had to take the back seat. Whereas before, I could knock them out, on the designated days that I have that scheduled. So I hear you. It's a time where our whole bodies, our whole beings are adjusting to the current state of affairs in the world and to the energy that's, present right now. And it's tough. It's tough being a human being. I think just from my perspective, I don't know if you see it this way. I think it's sometimes even tougher when you do know the truth and you do see what's happening versus maybe being in still that state where you're giving all of your power and attention to outside authorities who are telling you what's happening versus you knowing what's really happening inside of you.
Totally. I mean, it's easier to comply, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we were trained our entire lives to do so. First, usually depending on the parenting from our parental figures, those who raised us, depending on religious programming or cultural programming, there's that too. Then we have our school system. We've always been taught to respect, listen to, abide by, comply to the authorities. Always, always, always comply to the people in uniform, always, because they know better than us. They're the experts. And it is a lot easier because you can turn off a part of your brain, literally turn off a part of your brain, the part that gets to think critically or question things or be curious, and just listen and abide and comply. It's so much harder to do our own research. It's so much harder to question things. It's so much harder to remain curious and remain open to the possibility that we might be wrong and also we may not know everything. And to know the truth when it is a really ugly truth. It's hard.
Yeah.
And it's easy. I know we've had private conversations about this, but like looking through our social media feeds and seeing, certain quote unquote influencers, I call them influencers, not leaders, because they are influencers, not leaders, going about their business as if nothing has happened. Like marketing the same, showing up in the same way, messaging is the same, no acknowledgement whatsoever to the current state of the world. And I can also have compassion for them because I understand why they're doing it.
Yeah.
It's from this place of like fear, of uncertainty, and of just wanting to keep things safe, just wanting to maintain their brand, just wanting to do those things. And I think that's I know this is something we want to talk about. It's that compassion that is so necessary in our world right now. That can be hard for people like you and me to sometimes even feel, but it's so necessary because it seems like there are no conversations happening. It seems like everyone is just yelling on top of each other, trying to prove themselves right, or blissfully ignoring what's actually taking place.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. And I think that a lot of this was designed to do that.
Tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, I think
First of all, can we just like let everyone know like how long you've been in this rabbit hole? And actually, I don't want to call it a rabbit hole because that's like how they like to pigeonhole us as quote unquote conspiracy theorists. It's not a rabbit hole. What do we call it? Like research?
Yeah, research. How long have I been wearing my tinfoil hat, guys?
Since you came out of the womb.
I know. Actually, it's kind of felt that way in many ways. But I started going down this rabbit hole around 1920 or early, like late teens, early 20s, I would say. It was, I mean, I've always questioned our world. I'm just going to be honest about that. I never, ever thought that something was inherently aligned and right on this planet. And I don't say that from a judgment, but if I say that from more of a felt sense of a knowing. When we're talking about the knowing at the beginning of this, it's like I just knew that something was off. Something didn't feel right. And for me, it was, in my teens, I really started to question, like, people are so miserable in their jobs. People, are so excited for the weekend to come, and they work 5 days a week and they have 2 days off. And I'm like, I get why the system's been set up this way because I've been told that this is the way it is in school or with, my conditioning at home. But why do people comply? Why do people obey to this? Why are people not actually happy with their life. Like, why are they just kind of walking around like zombies, complaining about their lives, but they're not actually doing anything about it?
Mm-hmm.
So it was like that initial sort of critical thinking around, like, why is the world designed this way? Why is this set up this way? And why are people just falling in line with it? And it wasn't until it was a very synchronistic event that happened for me to start getting into this research. And of course, when you're ready, right? Once you're ready as a student, the teacher appears.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to get into that research. And I initially, it was extremely depressing. And some people would say, well, why would you bother reading this stuff or researching this stuff if it made you depressed? And it was depressing because it was actually very much aligned with the truth. And it was like, oh, fuck. So the
Mm-hmm.
things I have been feeling, I actually have been proven right, not wrong.
Right.
There's this resonates so deeply for me. And holy shit, all these years later, all the things that I had researched back then are happening.
Mm-hmm.
And in this last year, it's happening at an accelerated rate.
Yeah.
And it's not surprising to me to see this. And at the same time, for a lot of people, they're not ready to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they just aren't. And I've had to sit in I sat in meditation the other night and I asked about this. I have asked God, source, repeatedly, like, what is going on? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what's the game plan here, God? Like, what is the outcome to all of this? And a lot of it is around control.
Mm-hmm.
We know that we're being controlled, but it's also
Mm-hmm.
our internal, like, our reality is always reflecting internally what's happening. So there's this idea of like control and being controlled and the conversations around that. It's also around really shifting paradigms and collapsing the old world and rebuilding a new one. And I really do believe that we're in the midst of what we might call an apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
And apocalypse is not what Hollywood has framed it to be. Apocalypse
Right.
is really a term of like it is the end of times, but it's the end of what we've created that when I was a teenager, I was questioning. And I'm not
Yeah.
just talking about going to work 5 days a week. We have so many systems that are not working,
Right.
but they're
It's
not
we
just
have
going to
so many.
magically disappear.
Right. We have so many illusions that we've been living.
Yes.
And and just for our listeners, just to know, because I don't know if everyone understands this, but like prior to last year, I was open to all of this information, but I didn't fully believe it, nor did I try and research it. And I also had a very different view politically, had very different views on our systems. Last year really crumbled the matrix for me and helped me see clearly. And I think, the control thing is really interesting because yes, there's a lot of control being demonstrated in our world. And it's what's crazy to me is that people think it's crazy to um, compare what's happening today to the Holocaust. Like people think that that's crazy. The propaganda that's being thrown at us today, they think it's crazy to compare to the propaganda that was being. There is more propaganda being thrown at us today than there was during the Holocaust because we have devices in our hands at all times. We are constantly being shown messages, whether we are conscious of it or not. And once you set the intention to actually see these things, if you set the intention to see the ways in which you're being controlled, I assure you, you will see that. But I think people fear that so much because it's like you have this perfect image of a life. Everything feels okay. It may not feel great, but you know what to expect. And when you know what to expect, you feel safe. But what happens when the reality as you know it isn't the reality that you're living? What happens when you make that realization? It's a massive disintegration of the life that you know. And that is scary. And I know you went through this last year and I'm going through it this year is the whole internal control that you mentioned. Like I am learning really hard this year because spirit just keeps coming down at me that anytime I try and control something within myself, anything, even my fucking routine, spirit's like, nope, not going to happen. You need to learn how to not be in control and how to like surrender to the flow. And what I am starting to understand, because now I'm coming out of that dark night phase, is that this is part of the prep, because there is going to continue to be a massive disintegration of what we don't know. So the foundation that we stand on is going to continue to feel unstable. And we as leaders need to understand what it actually takes to then remain grounded in that, without all of these things that we try and use as mechanisms for control. I still don't know what that means.
Mhm.
I'm still
Mhm.
navigating it, but that's the message that keeps coming up. And I know you went through that last year, and I'm curious. Well, I'd love for you to kind of share your experience with this battle with internal control and how loud it is nowadays.
I mean, my journey around control and feeling safe and not trusting
Mm,
myself, not trusting divine intelligence, God's source. I mean, it was there from a very young age. I mean, I've always been very much in control. At least I
mhm,
thought I was, right? And I went through the ringer actually talking about plant medicine in my first ayahuasca ceremony in December of 2012.
mhm,
And man, was I put through the ultimate journey around that. And it was hard. It was
mhm,
painful. But what I was shown is that so much more opens and expands for us. There's so much more increase in terms of what's possible, not just for us ourselves internally, but externally, like for humanity. When we start to let go of this thinking of I'm in control of everything, and if I'm not in control, then I'm not safe.
mm,
It's so primal, right? This
mhm,
control piece is such a primal survival type type of instinct for
mhm,
people. And when we feel out of control, we don't feel safe. When we feel in control, we feel safer because we think that we're kind of like got everything in order.
mhm,
So I feel like for me, last year was such a big process. I mean, I started to go through a big kind of like shamanic death in July of 2019. It was the beginning of it.
mhm,
And just for the listeners, I'm intuitive and I channel and I hear. I've got a lot of the clairs developed and open, and I heard you're done with this, and I had thought I was done with what I was doing at the time, which is a lot of media work and like being in the media, and I felt there's just like complete completion happening, but actually I was done with that version of myself, the identities, the work I was doing, the things I was attaching to still at that time. And I was being invited into a complete dissolution
mm,
of the current identities that I had been really, feeling like I was being controlled by, or I felt safe in and comfortable in. And I go through many series of cycles like this, but this one has been one of the biggest ones that I've gone through. And it
mm,
makes a lot of sense as to why it started then, because towards the end of 2019, I knew something big was coming. Like I
mm,
felt something massive was going to happen on the planet. And I was still, even by December, still clamoring. I went to Colorado to do this whole, intensive experience around planning my month, planning my year, all of it.
mhm,
And I was clamoring still. I mean, when I look back, I'm just even thinking about it in this morning. In this moment, I can see myself even waking up in the middle of the night, freaking out around certain things that were just crumbling in my reality, around my work, around my leadership, around my identity of who I was as a human being. And it wasn't until this whole agenda started, and I'm not even going to call it the P word because it's
mhm,
not that anymore. It really is something completely different. This agenda unfolded in March of 2020,
mhm,
that I was initiated into this opportunity of actually not springing into action like I would have in the past. Like,
mhm.
oh my God, I need to scream from the rooftops what the F is actually happening here, and really tell people. I mean, initially, I think we were all kind of scared. I will openly admit that. We had no idea what the hell was kind of
Right.
happening. It was a new experience. Like, is
Definitely.
it really as deadly as they're telling us it is? But by April and then May, it was like, something's really off here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is not what it seems to be. And there's a whole plan coming down the pipeline. And instead of actually going into being what I would define as a leader, an active, kind of outspoken, visible person talking about, and sharing my thoughts on things, I was actually told, no, you are going inward.
Mm-hmm.
You are going through a whole process of surrender. This is not your time to be visible. This is not your time to share your thoughts. This is not your time to keep unrolling people and working. This is your time to rest and find joy in the moment. I'm like
Mm-hmm.
thinking, joy, everything in the world is shut down right now. Yes, I guess there's some joy in that, but
Right.
I want to move on. I have things to do. So
Right.
it was just this deeper invitation for me to just let all the entanglements around who I thought I should be or
Mm-hmm.
where I thought I should be by this moment, what I should be doing, how I should be showing up, like just letting it all dissolve into this space of nothingness and being safe in the nothingness of knowing that in that, like in the letting go of all that control, I've never felt better about
Mm-hmm.
myself. I've never felt so much more at ease with my life. Yes, oh, don't get me wrong. There are days where I really struggle with what's happening. And, I go into the controlling mechanisms
Right.
because I don't think it's like you practice this one time and it's done. It's a constant evolution of letting go and surrendering and the controlling, aspects of being human and
Mm-hmm.
having the ego operate through us. But it's been freeing.
Mm-hmm.
It was so freeing to look back at last year and be like, oh my God, like last year, yeah, a lot of this is crazy and it really sucks to see what's happening. But I'm really at peace with things. Like I actually started to do things that were always on the back burner, or I started to just really slow down and give myself permission to just be with myself and be, more in my body and be more in the moment, instead of focusing on what needs to be done this week or next week or planning, or I got to get this launched and that done. It's like, no, just create the space to just be in this total level of trust that everything is where it needs to be right now, and this is all occurring for a bigger purpose. And
Mm-hmm.
my role right now is not to be the person on the megaphone with signs in my hands protesting on the streets. It's
Right.
meant to be here inward with myself and finding safety within the moment,
Mm-hmm.
the now, because that's all that we have. It really truly is. It's all that we have.
That's such an important reminder, to find safety in the here and now. Because I think, we have kind of like both sides of the spectrum. We've got people who are big time preppers, prepping for doomsday, and then we have people who are just living life as usual. Um, and I don't think either are really finding the safety in the present. Like, I think it's great to be, it's smart to be prepared. It's smart to, prepare your home and prepare your lives and just be ready and be informed. Um, but you can do that and be in a fear based mindset. You can do that and still feel at a loss of control, and a loss of safety. And it's funny because, like, when I went to Peru in 2019, my biggest lesson was safety. That was my biggest lesson. Out of everything, just kind of like kept funneling back to feeling safe. And feeling safe without my partner, feeling safe without things that would normally make me feel safe, like electricity and clean water and, um, light. Like, I would have to walk around in pitch black at like 3, 4 in the morning when we're done ceremony, and find my way to my maloka. And it was such an interesting experience for me to dissolve the illusion of what I thought safety really was, and to reconnect to the safety within myself, understanding that as long as I am being present and staying present and grounding myself in the present, I am safe, you know? And I think that that's such a big lesson for everyone to learn right now, because we're like, this shit is just getting started. It's
Mhm.
going to get a lot worse before it gets better. You and I know this. We've both been preaching this. Like, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And so it's important for us to work within ourselves to create that sense of safety, as well as to continue to release control, which, God, like, it feels like shit releasing control. I love control. I love being in control of everything. Like, I am a control freak. I'm just gonna like admit it. I love control because it equates to certainty. It equates to
Mhm.
like safety, and without that, I mean, I am letting go of control with so many things. My business, not running my business the same, not putting my offers out there, with my home life, with my personal life, with my routines, with my workouts, with everything, like just like kind of like disintegrating that sense of control and stepping into I don't know what, which is the hard part. But that, I think, is the invitation for everyone, is to be open to step into the I don't know what.
Yeah.
Because if we do remain in that state of control, no matter what side you see yourself in, you're kind of feeding into the agenda.
Exactly. Which was the point that we were making earlier around it's been designed this way.
Mm-hmm.
Let's keep people separated. Let's keep people freaking out regardless of what side they're on
Right.
of
Because
this
people on all
conversation.
sides are freaking out.
And a lot of the freaking out is this projection into a potential future,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like people who are like, this is an agenda. I need to prepare for the end of the world. I need to tell everybody about what's going on. There's a fear that if they don't, that we're going to go into a world that we don't want to live in.
Right.
And the people who are on the other side who are like, I believe everything that's happening. I need to make sure that I get this injection. I need to make sure that I'm at home and I'm covering my face with 4 masks and all of this stuff. It's like safety, right? It's a fear of death. It's a fear of getting or contracting this so-called virus that's invisible in the world that could harm them or harm other people. So it's really about looking at where are your intentions coming from? What are you being motivated by? Because I think you can be present and I think you can be sharing your truth. I think you can be speaking about this, but it's in the moment. That's where am I doing this because I'm freaking out? Am I in fear? Because I feel like I need to shove this information down someone's throat, or I need to hide out in my house until all of this goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are you being motivated by right now? And, control is really rooted in fear most of the time, right? It can be rooted in a lot of fear. The fear of that God doesn't have a plan, or God doesn't have my back, or I can't take care of myself, or,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get sick, or I'm going to die, whatever it is. I mean, fear is a part of the controlling mechanisms that we have. And
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think we need to be smart. We have our stuff all ready for a potential, doomsday kind of
I've
experience.
got a lot of rice and lentils at home right now. I'm not
I
gonna
know we do
lie.
too. We have enough rice and canned stuff for like the next 10 years. And, I think at the same time, it's like here and now. One of the things, and I will say this, that has been so important, and I feel like this is a great takeaway for people. And I started to get this kind of, I hate that word download, but
Download.
for lack of better description, I got this download in, I think it was December, and I had actually written about it. And the focus is on, in the present moment, we are creating our future, right? We know this. A lot of us who've been on this path, who've been doing this work, spiritual work, we're creating in every moment. And so we are feeding into this matrix, this collective consciousness, what we're seeing into our future with our visions, with our thoughts, with our beliefs, with our actions, our words, all of it. So if you are somebody who, as a leader, who feels like you need to share all of this information, that's great. But what are you doing in your private time? When you're meditating, when you're reflecting on the world that you want to create, what are you visualizing?
Mm-hmm.
What are you engaging your senses around? What are you imagining is going to happen? The very thing that you're trying to tell people to wake up about?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you actually informing and then educating people, like, this is how we can start to create our world? Because everything starts as energy first.
Mm-hmm.
It's all energetic. So what you're focusing on is constantly expanding and is constantly feeding the matrix. It's constantly feeding the collective. So we have to be very cautious now, especially for those of us who have been on this path, who practice meditation, visualization, who feel like we need to be the way showers of what's happening, to, yes, do our due diligence of informing people in a way that's respectful, in a way that's honoring other people maybe who don't agree with us. And also, what are we focusing on in our everyday moment, in the now? Are we imagining a future that is bright, that is beautiful? I mean, so much of this manifestation stuff, right? Like, I don't really teach any of that stuff because that is actually not even rooted in a lot of the stuff that we are promoting here. Light, a lot of it is actually quite dark. And when we talk about manifestation in a personal level, right? We imagine ourselves at the end goal, or having the thing that we want to, bring into our life. Well, what about the world? What are we focusing on? We need to also think about the collective, not just our own selves. So really coming down to this, what kind of future are you here to create? And where your energy is, if it's in fear, regardless of wherever side you're on, if you're on any side at all. I hate that we even have to describe that there's a side to this. But that's the way it looks. That's the way it appears right now in our reality. Is it coming from fear, or is it coming from love? Is it coming from a place of like really imagining people being free, people, being sovereign, people being empowered and really sharing their magnificence? Are you imagining people being abundant and provided for and ultimately safe? What does safety look like and feel like without controlling everything? Because there's a whole other paradigm around feeling safe that is beyond the survival patterns.
Yeah, and that's a program that many humans have yet to really fully tap into, right? Because this is the program that we're running. And yeah, it's important to understand also that even though people have been privy to the agenda, we still don't know how this is going to roll out. Like, we still don't know the impact at the end. Like, what is that going to be? Which means we still have the power to create, design the future that we want for humanity. And I think this is what people are forgetting, is like, oh, this all happened, let's just doomsday prep, I'm going to go live in Tulum and I'm going to go do this and like all the things. And it's like, but you don't understand. Like, we still have the power to create something pretty awesome after this. Yes, the plan is rolling through how they want it to roll through, but the impact of the plan is dependent on us. We contribute to that. And I think that's really important for people to understand, is that we're not leading into a finite end result. We are co-creating that end result. So what end result do you want to co-create? What is this next chapter for humanity that you want to step into? How do you want that to look and feel? Let's create that. Let's focus on that.
Bingo. Spot on. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that was I need one of those like buttons where we can do like mic drop.
Yeah, mic drop. That's it. Yeah. What's the future you're co-creating, guys? Is it one of fear, or is it one of like freedom and love and magnificence?
Yeah, and not like, and when we say freedom, because even that word's become triggering to a lot of people.
I know, it's true. Yeah.
Like, what isn't triggering people? Like, Dr. Seuss is triggering people. Everything is triggering people. And yet what's happening in the world isn't triggering. Anyways, I digress. But, and when it comes to what you want to co-create for humanity, understand that the people have more power than those who are in power right now. So unity, as woo-woo as it sounds, is actually what we want. We want to be able to have conversations with each other. We want to be able to see each other eye to eye. We want to be able to have conversations and not call each other conspiracy theorists or sheep, but really understand that deep down inside, we all want the same damn thing.
Yeah.
we all want to feel free. Some people think that the passport is going to be what sets them free, whereas other people understand that life without this jab is what's going to set us free. Life without all these restrictions is what's going to set us free. But at the end of the day, we all want to feel free.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's what I had to say about that, because it's so crazy. Like, I feel like anytime I write the word freedom, people get triggered. And I'm like, since when did that word become a trigger word?
Because people are relinquishing their responsibility to look
Mhm.
inside of themselves.
Well said.
And that's why people are so triggered.
Yep. It's
You have to change. You have to do this. You need to do that. You need to behave this way. You can't speak like that. You
Mhm.
can't talk about those things. It's like, look at yourself. When you point one finger, there's three coming back at you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny because like I'm in Texas and the mask restriction was lifted, although a lot of businesses are still choosing to uphold it, and most of the population is choosing to wear it. And the first day that I went out without a mask, I went to the grocery store, I went to a restaurant, and both times there was that sense of like, like I feel free, and there was the sense of, oh my God, I'm doing something wrong. And I thought that was so interesting to observe within myself, because I know it's not something wrong, but this is how deep the brainwashing can go.
Right.
This is how deep the control goes. Even those who, like me, who are outspoken and who are against everything, we still are impacted and influenced by what's taking place. So I just thought I'd share that because I thought it was so interesting.
That is. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I've experienced that within myself too.
Mm-hmm. It's like, am I doing something wrong? Because you look around and everyone's kind of doing the same thing. And it's like, no, we need to understand that asking questions, questioning the narrative, questioning what's happening, um, isn't wrong.
Yeah.
Since when did asking questions become wrong or not okay? So, yeah, this is the time. Quite a time to be alive, quite a time to do the work that we're doing.
Yeah.
Because I think no matter where you're at, coaches, healers, everyone listening, we're all going through some shit, like internally as well as externally, the collective, what we're experiencing. And it is really quite the time to be alive.
It is. I think a lot of us came here specifically for this.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I believe that 100%.
Yeah.
Vanessa, thank you so much for diving into this conversation with me. We can always talk for hours. I mean, it's just our first time, just so everyone knows, the first time Vanessa and I met was in Mount Shasta, of all places, like the most galactic place in our world. And we shared a bed together for a mastermind. And it was like it was just instantaneous sisterhood, I think, because we could jam about everything. So I hope that listeners and viewers, you enjoyed this conversation and learned something from it. And Vanessa, why don't you tell everyone how they can connect with you if they want to reach out after this podcast?
Of course. And thank you for having me back on. I love these conversations. I know we could talk forever on them. And I am excited to talk with you if you want to give some feedback or reach out. Once you've heard this episode, you can find me on Instagram, Vanessa Petronelli. You can find me on Facebook at vpetronelli and on my website, vanessapetronelli.com.
Awesome. So I'm going to have those links and more in the show notes. Vanessa, I love you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I love you too. Thank you. And thanks for listening.
Yeah. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us for another episode of Today's Thought Leader, where we're challenging you to activate the leader within. Make sure you download a few episodes, drop a rating and review as always. And make sure you connect with myself and Vanessa on social media, on all the things. My handle is at I am Ruby. And then make sure you check back on Monday for a brand new episode of Today's Thought Leader.